Let's go Dolphins! Something different is happening behind the scenes in Miami, and I'll tell you right now, it's the kind of change that could elevate this franchise to a new level or generate one of the biggest debates among fans in years. Because, looking closely at what just happened, it doesn't seem like a normal draft. It seems like a calculated message to the entire AFC East. And not everyone will agree with how it was done. Now, before connecting all the pieces and showing why this could be much bigger than it seems, I need to know your opinion. Click like right now if you believe the Dolphins are finally building something concrete, and leave a comment. I trust in this new era if you are confident about the team's future. Now let's get straight into what's turning heads across the league. This wasn't just any draft for Miami. This was a statement. According to the information we've gathered, Sullivan didn't just draft talent, he strategically outmaneuvered division rivals at multiple key moments. And that's something Dolphins fans have been craving for years, a front office that doesn't just react, but anticipates and strikes. Let's start with the second round, where Miami selected linebacker Jacob Rodriguez with the 43rd overall pick. What makes this pick even more intriguing is that Rodriguez was reportedly the top target for the New York Jets at pick 44. Miami stepped in just one spot ahead and took him, forcing the Jets to pivot completely. That's not just drafting, that's disruption. And while some fans initially questioned whether Rodriguez was the best fit compared to other prospects, what's becoming clear is how highly the organization values him. Sullivan himself praised Rodriguez as a leader, someone capable of calling the defense, a green dot player, which signals massive responsibility for a rookie. Think about that for a second. A rookie potentially stepping in as the defensive signal caller on day one. That tells you everything about how this coaching staff views his football IQ and leadership. And with uncertainty around players like Tyrell Dodson, who is entering the final year of his contract, there's a real possibility that Rodriguez could immediately reshape the linebacker room. But the aggression didn't stop there. In the first round, Miami made another bold move, trading up from pick 30 to 27 to secure cornerback Chris Johnson. Now here's where things get even more interesting. There were strong indications that the Buffalo Bills were targeting Johnson, expecting him to still be available after trading back. Miami read the situation perfectly and jumped ahead to take him. That forced Buffalo into scrambling mode, eventually trading out of the first round entirely. And let me tell you, this isn't just about blocking a rival. Chris Johnson looks like a potential cornerstone piece. The numbers speak for themselves: dominant production, elite ball skills, and the kind of physical traits that fit exactly what this new defensive identity is trying to build. Coaches are already talking about his ability to impact the game at multiple levels, and there's real belief he could develop into a CB1 sooner rather than later. Then in the fourth round, Miami struck again. Reports suggest the New England Patriots were looking to move up and select Trey Moore, but the Dolphins stayed put and took him at pick 130. That's 3 division rivals, 3 moments where Miami stepped in and changed their plans. It's almost like Sullivan had a blueprint not just for his own team, but for everyone else's as well. What stands out across all these moves is a clear pattern. This front office is prioritizing toughness, intelligence, versatility, and physicality. Every pick feels intentional, part of a larger vision to reshape the identity of this team, especially on defense. Players like Rodriguez, Johnson, and Moore aren't just filling roster spots, they're being brought in to establish a new culture. Now here's where things get really interesting for you as a fan. Because while the strategy looks impressive on paper, there are still questions. Can these rookies deliver immediately? Is this aggressive approach enough to close the gap with teams like Buffalo? And most importantly, is John Eric Sullivan proving he's the right man to lead this franchise into the future? And this is where the conversation inside the Dolphins organization gets even more intense, because what we're seeing right now isn't just a draft class, it's the early stages of a complete defensive transformation. The front office didn't just bring in talent, they brought in players who can wear multiple hats, and that's something defensive coordinator Jeff Hafley is going to love working with as the season approaches. When you look deeper into Trey Moore, for example, this is not your traditional edge rusher. At 6 feet 1 inch, 243 pounds, he might be considered undersized if you're thinking purely as a pass rusher coming off the edge. But if you expand your perspective and look at how modern defenses operate, especially aggressive and creative ones, suddenly a player like Moore becomes extremely valuable. He has the athleticism to drop back into coverage, the quickness to attack the quarterback, and the versatility to line up in different positions depending on the situation. There are even comparisons being made between Moore and Kyle Van Noy, and that's not something to ignore. Van Noy built a long and successful career in the NFL by doing exactly what Moore is projected to do, being a chess piece on defense. Not locked into one role, but constantly adapting, confusing offenses, and making plays in multiple phases of the game. If more could even come close to that kind of impact, the Dolphins may have found a hidden gem in the 4th round. Now take a step back and look at the bigger picture. You've got Jacob Rodriguez, who could step in immediately as a leader and signal caller. You've got Chris Johnson, who already looks like he could develop into a true number 1 cornerback. And you've got Trey Moore, a versatile weapon who can be deployed in a variety of ways. All 3 of these snipe picks came on the defensive side of the ball. That's not a coincidence. This front office is sending a very clear message. The identity of the Miami Dolphins is going to be built through defense, intelligence, and adaptability. And while it's true that the roster, as it stands, may not be the most talented on paper compared to some of the top teams in the league, there's something else being built here. Something that doesn't always show up in stat sheets right away. It's about development. It's about growth from week 1 to week 18. There's a strong belief internally that this team is going to improve as the season progresses, as these young players gain experience and as the coaching staff continues to figure out how to maximize each player's strengths within this evolving system. And let's be honest with each other for a moment. That kind of approach requires patience. Not every fan is going to be comfortable with that. Some want immediate results, especially after missing out on the Super Bowl. But what Sullivan is doing right now suggests he's thinking long-term while still trying to stay competitive in the present. The real question now becomes how quickly this vision can translate into wins. Because outsmarting division rivals in the draft is one thing, but beating them on the field is what truly matters. And with the Buffalo Bills, New York Jets, and New England Patriots all making their own moves, this division is not going to get any easier. And there's another layer to all of this that Dolphins fans cannot afford to ignore, because what John Eric Sullivan showed in this draft goes beyond just identifying talent. It shows timing, awareness, and a clear understanding of how the board was going to fall before it actually happened. Look back at the sequence of events. Miami didn't just randomly land these players. They consistently positioned themselves right before positional runs began. When offensive linemen started to come off the board, Miami had already secured their guy. When linebackers were about to go in a wave, Jacob Rodriguez was already wearing aqua and orange. The same thing happened with tight ends and defensive pieces later in the draft. That kind of anticipation is not luck. That's preparation, scouting, and a front office that is fully aligned in its vision. And that's where the optimism starts to grow, even for the more skeptical fans. Because for years, one of the biggest criticisms of the Dolphins has been inconsistency in roster building. Not just in who they drafted, but in how those pieces fit together. Now, for the first time in a while, you can actually see a blueprint forming. Every pick feels connected. Every move feels like it serves a larger purpose. But here's the reality check that not everyone wants to hear. Talent alone doesn't win in the NFL. Potential doesn't win either. Execution does. Development does. And that's where this entire draft class will be tested. Because asking rookies like Rodriguez, Johnson, and Moore to step in and contribute early is a huge responsibility. There will be growing pains. There will be moments where these players look like rookies. And in a division as competitive as the AFC East, those moments can be costly. But if this coaching staff, led by Jeff Hafley on defense, can accelerate that development curve, this team could look very different by the end of the season compared to how it starts. Another key factor here is identity. For the past few seasons, the Dolphins have been searching for a consistent identity.